"What the hell is that dog doing in the West Wing again?" The nurse's voice sliced through the corridor like a cold wind. "Get him out before someone falls over him." Copper didn't move. The golden retriever stood frozen at the base of the roped-off hallway, his nose pressed against the peeling wallpaper. He let out a low, almost mournful whine, barely audible over the hum of flickering ceiling lights. Behind him, Eleanor watched from her wheelchair, her frail fingers twitching. In her lap, Noah, the new part-time custodian, paused as he came around the corner. "That's the third time today," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "He only goes there when something's wrong." The other staff rolled their eyes. Copper was an old therapy dog, once trained to detect seizures and anxiety. Most believed he was just running on instinct, following ghosts that weren't there. But Noah had seen something else in the dog's eyes lately. A kind of knowing. The West Wing had been sealed off for years, ever since a pipe burst caused black mold to spread beneath the walls. Administration said repairs were too expensive, so it stayed locked, forgotten. But Copper never forgot. That night, after the halls emptied and the patients were asleep, Copper returned again. Noah followed, flashlight in hand. The silence in the hallway was thick, almost unnatural. At the far end, Copper stopped in front of an old fire panel set into the wall. He pawed at the baseboard, whining again, more urgently this time. Noah knelt, shining his light across the warped floor. That's when he saw a hairline crack along the wall's edge. He pressed his palm against the panel, expecting resistance, but instead, it gave slightly, almost like it had been opened before. Gritting his teeth, he pushed harder. The panel popped loose. Behind it was not a fire hose, it was a narrow door, low, rusted, and almost completely obscured by drywall and insulation. Noah's heart pounded. He called Copper back, but the dog refused to budge. Instead, he pressed forward, nose now at the thin seam where the door met the wall. Noah pulled a screwdriver from his belt and pried gently. The door creaked open into darkness. The smell hit him first. Dust, metal, and something else, something old and earthy like rotting paper. He aimed his flashlight inside. There was a hallway, cramped, unfinished, and lined with decaying tile. Copper stepped in without hesitation. The tunnel curved and dipped, leading to a space beneath the nursing home that shouldn't have existed. Noah followed, breath shallow. At the end of the tunnel was a room, small cement walls, a single broken cot, and on the far wall, in faded blue crayon, were the words, "Please don't forget me." Noah stared at the writing, heart lodged in his throat. There were no records of this place in the floor plans, no mention of it in the facility archives, and yet, here it was, sealed, hidden, and silent for over a decade. Whoever had been in this room had wanted someone to know they'd been here, someone to remember. Copper sat beside the cot, tail still, eyes fixed on the wall as if he, too, was listening for something buried in the past. And in that moment, Noah knew this was no ordinary find. Something had been hidden here, and the dog had never stopped trying to bring it to light. Noah didn't sleep that night. He sat in his car outside the nursing home, hands gripping the steering wheel. The words scrawled on the wall burning into his mind. "Please don't forget me." They weren't childish scribbles, they were desperate, intentional. It was the kind of plea that didn't come from someone trying to escape, but someone trying to be found. By morning, the hallway had been quietly resealed. The facility administrator, Mr. Turner, was already waiting in his office when Noah arrived. He didn't ask how Noah had discovered the tunnel. Instead, he spoke slowly, his voice low, like someone trying to keep the truth pinned down. "There's nothing down there that concerns you. If you value your job, you'll leave it alone." Noah didn't answer, but Copper did. He stood in the doorway, tail stiff, ears forward, body locked toward Mr. Turner as if he sensed something Noah couldn't yet name. The administrator's hand twitched against his desk, and for a second, something flickered across his face. Not fear, but unease. Copper saw it too, and he didn't blink. Noah spent the rest of the day combing through the archived medical logs in the supply closet no one had touched in years. Most of the files were water-damaged, faded ink barely legible, but between two file boxes marked 2008 and 2010, he found a folder with no label, no barcode, just a yellowed corner and brittle paper inside. It held a single intake form. No date, no room assignment, just a name written in a child's block letters, Maya, that was it. No birth date, no next of kin. But the nurse's signature on the bottom was familiar. He'd seen it on Eleanor's records too. He rushed to her room. Eleanor was wide awake, staring out the window. She didn't flinch when Noah entered. "You found her, didn't you?" she whispered. Noah nodded, gently placing the form in her lap. "Did you know her?" "She was 5, quiet, had a teddy bear with a missing eye." Eleanor's fingers trembled as they touched the paper. "They said she was too unstable to stay with the others, that she needed special care." Her voice cracked. "I never saw her again after they moved her. Just silence, like she never existed." Outside, Copper sat beside the door, unmoving. That night, Noah returned to the secret room with a pair of bolt cutters and an old crowbar. He pried open a secondary wall panel at the back of the room. Behind it, more drywall, more secrets, then something soft. A child's blanket, tattered, but intact. Underneath it, a toy music box, rusted but still faintly playing a tune when touched. The same melody Eleanor used to hum. Suddenly, the room didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt like it was listening. Copper pressed his head against the cot's leg and let out a low whine. Not fear, recognition. Something inside him knew what this place had been. It hadn't just been a storage room. It had been a cell, and someone small and innocent had been left there. Noah held the music box in both hands and whispered, "We hear you now," because for the first time in over a decade, the silence was broken, and the truth had started to rise. By the following morning, word had begun to spread, but only in whispers. One of the janitors had caught a glimpse of Noah carrying the rusted music box wrapped in a towel. A nurse overheard Eleanor humming a tune she hadn't sung in years. But no one said anything out loud. Not yet. At Briarview, secrets were the wallpaper. They held the place together more than anyone cared to admit. Noah knew the longer he waited, the more likely the truth would be buried again. But he couldn't act recklessly. He needed proof, something undeniable. So he went back one more time. This time he brought a camera. Copper followed without being told. He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He simply moved with a certainty that made Noah believe the dog wasn't just remembering, he was grieving. Inside the hidden room, Noah documented everything. The cot, the scrawled crayon message, the music box, the blanket with a faded unicorn stitched at one corner. But then he noticed something he'd missed before: a thin line along the far wall, barely visible behind a rusted metal cabinet. He dragged it aside, coughing from the dust. The panel behind it had been sealed with industrial staples. With trembling hands, he pried the metal loose. What he found was a narrow cavity between the walls about 3 feet deep. Inside it, stacked carefully, were dozens of drawings. Crayon, marker, pencil, all signed with the same small looping name, Maya. The pictures were of a garden, a tree, a window, and a dog with a golden tail. Noah sat back, stunned. He took a photo of every image, each one whispering the same truth. Maya had been alive down here for days, maybe longer. She hadn't stopped drawing. She hadn't stopped hoping someone would come. Suddenly, Copper started growling, not viciously but low and deliberate. Noah turned, flashlight trembling in his hand. The doorway wasn't empty anymore. Mr. Turner stood there. "You should have stayed out of this," the administrator said, his voice tight, his hands in his pockets. Noah straightened, heart pounding. "You knew," he said quietly. "You knew about her." Turner didn't deny it. "It was a different time. We weren't equipped to deal with children like her. There were accidents. Paperwork went missing. Families stopped visiting. Sometimes it was easier to just move forward by locking a child in a room and pretending she never existed." Noah's voice rose, a tremble creeping into his throat. Turner's face darkened. "You don't understand how this place works. If this gets out, we lose everything: funding, jobs, protection. That girl's story will ruin us." Copper stepped between them, hackles raised. "I'm not the one who ruined it," Noah said. Eyes locked on Turner's. "You did that when you walked away." By the time Turner turned and left, saying nothing more, Noah had already decided he wouldn't stay silent, not like the others. That night he uploaded the photos and a full written report to an anonymous tip line for investigative journalism. He didn't sign his name. He didn't have to. And at dawn, as the sun poured through the high windows of the nursing home, Copper sat again by the eastern hallway wall, not waiting, not lost, but guarding something no longer hidden. The truth had begun to surface, and the silence at Briarview had finally cracked open. It didn't take long for the tremors to reach the surface. 3 days after Noah submitted the anonymous report, a quiet black sedan appeared outside Briarview just after sunrise. 2 men in plain suits stepped out, their postures stiff, their pace measured. They didn't ask for directions. They already knew where they were going. Mr. Turner met them at the entrance, already sweating despite the morning chill. He smiled, 2 wide hands clasped tightly in front of him, like a man who'd rehearsed the wrong speech. "Is this about the inspection request?" "We're always happy to. We're here regarding the East Wing," one of the men interrupted, "and a missing patient file." The second handed him a printed photo, Maya's intake form, the one with no date, no guardian, no exit signature. Turner froze. Words spread like wind through dry leaves. The staff whispered between rooms, some scared, some oddly relieved. Eleanor, still in her wheelchair near the south courtyard, simply closed her eyes when she saw the sedan. "It's time," she said. Tokpaw had taken up his spot beside the entrance of the old sealed hallway again. He didn't whine. He didn't move. He just sat waiting for someone to finally come, looking for the truth he had carried longer than anyone. Noah kept his distance as the investigators descended into the hidden tunnel. He didn't need to see it again. He'd already memorized every inch, every drawing, every smell. But still, he paced the hallway like something inside him was unfinished. Like it wasn't enough to be right. Something had to change. By evening, the nursing home administrator was placed on unpaid suspension pending further inquiry. Files were seized. Staff were questioned. And in the center of it all, Copper remained the one constant, the living witness to a forgotten tragedy no one had dared acknowledge until now. That night, Eleanor asked Noah to sit beside her. She used to call him Goldie, she whispered, before he had a name badge. She said he reminded her of her brother's dog. Gentle but fierce. She trusted him. Noah looked down at the dog beside them, eyes heavy but alert. She was right, I think, Eleanor said, her voice trembling. That dog was the only one who ever heard her cry. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, but full of things never said, apologies never spoken, grief never given its place. The next morning, a letter arrived at the front desk. Hand-delivered, no return address. Inside was a faded photograph to children sitting on a swing set, one of them unmistakably Maya, behind them the same oak tree that stood in the home's courtyard today. On the back was a single sentence, written in neat, careful handwriting. She never stopped waiting. Thank you for finding her. Noah didn't know who had sent it. A former nurse, a sibling, a caseworker silenced by time. It didn't matter. What mattered was that someone else had remembered her too. For the first time in over a decade, Maya's name was spoken out loud during morning announcements. In honor of the young soul who once lived within these walls, the director said quietly, "We dedicate the East Courtyard to Maya Lin." They didn't say how she died, or when, or why the system had let her vanish. But her name was no longer hidden. And for those who had once walked past that sealed door without a second glance, something shifted. They would never walk past it the same way again. Part 5. Dog uncovers secret. Room in nursing home. What they found was buried for over a decade. It rained the morning the memorial plaque was placed. Not the kind of rain that hammers the ground, but a soft, steady drizzle that seemed to hush everything around it. The courtyard, once forgotten and crumbling, had been quietly transformed. The cracked stone walkway was swept clean, the overgrown hedges trimmed, and a small bench stood beneath the old oak tree where sunlight had once filtered through for a child who had waited too long. At the base of the tree, a bronze plaque read, "In memory of Maya Lin. Seen, remembered, loved." Noah stood off to the side, hands in his pockets, soaked to the elbows. He hadn't planned to speak, but when the moment stretched and no one stepped forward, he cleared his throat. His voice didn't rise above the rain at first. "I never met her," he began, eyes locked on the plaque. "But I've seen her drawings. I've seen where she was kept, and I've seen the silence we all walked past." He looked at Copper, sitting next to the tree, head bowed, tail still. But she wasn't forgotten. Not by everyone. There was no applause when he stepped back. No nods of approval. Just a heavy stillness, shared between the residents and staff. Some too old to remember clearly, others too young to have known what this place once tried to hide. Later that afternoon, Noah returned to Eleanor's room. Her bed was empty. She had passed quietly in her sleep the night before. There was no dramatic note, no farewell letter. Just a small envelope left on her nightstand with Noah's name on it. Inside was a photograph, a grainy snapshot of a girl hugging a golden dog, her face hidden in his fur. In the corner, written in the same uneven handwriting as the crayon messages on the wall, were 3 words, "Goldie kept me." Noah sat down and wept for the first time in weeks. Grief didn't roar, it whispered. In the days that followed, the nursing home adjusted. Some staff left, new ones came. Policies were rewritten, safety checks were mandated, and yet none of that carried the weight of what Copper had done simply by not giving up. He had never stopped going to that hallway, never stopped waiting, never stopped remembering. He had carried a truth no one wanted to face, and now in the softened light of the garden, where a little girl's name would never again be erased, he lay peacefully beside the bench, guarding the silence he had once fought to break. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive in courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it comes in the form of a dog who refuses to turn away, and sometimes that's enough to rewrite everything.